Hi, I'm Julie Nelson. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for Great Rivers United Way, and welcome to Coffee and Conversation. Today's topic is on minimalist living, and I think you're going to enjoy the story of Cate Hollowitsch. Cate is a former board member for Great Rivers United Way, and she started out by cleaning out her parents' house and then eventually kind of had an epiphany and moved into a tiny home of her own. So please welcome Cate Hollowitsch.
It's interesting because the situation that got me to minimalist living is replaying in my life like today, right at this moment. So my story won't relate to any of you unless you're kind of in the same space that I'm in. So I actually don't want to spend a ton of time going into the details about what got me to this place or how we're doing it. I took a quick little video of my home because I know you're all dying to see how small I'm living in. So I'm going to share that for sure. But I'm going to give you just a very short version of how we kind of got to this place and why we got to this place, so that if that version of it relates to you, you'll be able to understand what I'm saying. But then the rest of the time, I do have a couple of PowerPoint slides I can show you if we need to, about some myths and some truths about what minimalism is or what it could be for you, and then some tips and tricks on how to get started. But we can also do those things via conversation, which is what I really want. I want you to pepper me with questions or discuss things in your own world that you're struggling with, and as a group, we can talk through those. So for us, when this all started for us a number of years ago, and we didn't even realize that we would end up today where we are when those moments in our life happened years and years and years ago. And so I've always been kind of a person that doesn't love the clutter. And my husband is even worse than me. So we've always been kind of neat freaks and like things to be orderly and have a place. And so with three daughters, that was a little, impossible. Let's be real. They have a lot of stuff, those girls. But we wanted them to also, work well together. We didn't want to live in a house that allowed everybody to go hide in their neutral corners and not work their stuff out, because that's not cool. So we had a modest home, I would say, 3,800 square feet. Maybe some of you can relate to that size number, that size living. The girls had their own spaces, but we forced them to share a bathroom and things like that because we wanted them to always, be together and function as a team. But we hated the stuff. We hated the darn Barbie dolls and the whatever toy and the Bratz dolls. I mean, whatever the next thing was, all these kids were giving it to them at parties, and we didn't want any of that. So when they were about 8, 9, 10, somewhere in there, we decided no more presents. We're not buying them anything. We're not having parties for them. We're not doing Christmas presents. We are making memories. And so I lost a parent when I was in high school, and that was something that mattered to me. My husband also lost parents early in life, and that was something that mattered to him. Was we need more memories together. We don't need more stuff. And so we started taking the girls on vacations and giving them experiences and building more memories. And so that was the first step of looking back in hindsight to say we were well suited to downsize, because we were already in a mindset of the crap in our house doesn't matter to us as much as the people in our house matter. And so that was our first indication that this was going to be where we were going to end up. And then about 5 years ago, my father passed away, and he was the last remaining parent for me, and biological parent for my husband. He has a foster mother that's still living in the area. But basically, our parental units were gone, and now we were doing legacy cleaning. Has anybody done legacy cleaning? You can wave at your camera. Legacy cleaning is hard. It's hard. And my dad was super practical, super frugal. He didn't have much, and he was very pristine about, your brother is getting this, you are getting this, I want this to go here. But even after all that was said and done, there were countertops full of Tupperware and closets full of vacuum cleaner bags. And I mean, just the stuff, batteries. He was a Depression era kid. He kept every darn battery from everything, just in case, because you never know. I mean, that level of like stuff that we had to sort through while we were grieving was super hard. And our children were in college at the time, and so they were participating and helping us. And so they were watching us go through it and kind of in it too. And then when we took all this stuff back home to our 3,800 square foot house, they kind of lost their minds. They were a little bit like, oh, you're not doing that to us. Like, no, we are not cleaning up after you two. And so that started the path. And so my husband and I decide, I'm really, slim down the timeline here and cutting out a ton of the detail, but But that was kind of the climax moment that to him and I said, we're downsizing. We're totally downsizing. We don't want an acre of land to clean all the time. I don't want 5 bathrooms to clean. The kids don't want to sort through our Tupperware and our spatulas. They don't. They don't want my mother's bread maker. It has no bearing to them whatsoever. They don't want it. So that was our moment of like, we are putting the house on the market and we're downsizing and we're moving and we're cleaning all this up so our children don't have to do it. And that's going to free us up to do even more memories and take even more awesome vacations with the kids and do all kinds of fun stuff. And that's kind of what led us to where we are right at the moment. So for us, the minimalist living was not about saving the environment and we're on a tiny house kick, so let's join the bandwagon. We also kind of don't care what other people think. So we weren't, trying to keep up with the Joneses or get on the next cool trend. And so minimalism to us could be very different than what it looks like to somebody else who uses that phrase. So for all of you, it's going to be a very different experience and a very different story about downsizing as well. So that's kind of a little bit about my path. Can I show you the video really quick so we can get that out of our systems? So we can all just see the little house. So if the sound doesn't work, don't panic. It's just me yapping and it's no big deal, but it's probably more about the video that you really want to watch. So, and bear with me while I get this running because I was practicing this morning and I was having technical difficulties with it, but I think it's going to work. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. All right, everyone ready? Okay, welcome to my tiny home. I'm going to give you a quick little tour. Hopefully it's not too blurry. I just came in the front door and it enters right into our living room and our kitchen. So it's a big open concept. So we have lots of space, and that doorway back there goes to our laundry room and our extra soda fridge, which you can kind of see. And then that's the back door to the house back that way. And then this hallway goes down to 2 bedrooms and a full-size bath. So we have a ton of room in our little space. And you can see that we also got to keep a vast majority of all the things that mattered the most to us, which we decided together. And I'll talk a little bit about that, but I thought you might enjoy seeing just how much possessions you can get into 900 square feet. Okay, that was fun, huh? Oh, I don't want to do that. Okay, so now I have to figure out how to stop sharing, which I use Teams more than I use Zoom, so you'll have to forget. Oh, there it is. Okay, now I'm back. All right, so does anyone have any questions so far? I want to pause for a minute because I don't want to do all the talking. Anyone? No?
You said it's 900 square feet.
900 square feet.
Is that on the larger size of a tiny home, or what's the average?
I don't know, because it depends. I mean, people just use the word tiny home for whatever. For us, it was tiny because we went from 3,800 square feet to 900, so, tiny. But when you're watching like those tiny home living TV shows on HGTV, some of those are like 200 square feet, which that's to me is extreme. But I mean, some of those are 800 or 900 square feet, which is close to us. So I think that phrase is kind of misused or it just implies something different for everybody. This we consider 900 square feet tiny, but that's probably an average apartment, like a condo would be 900 to 1,200 square feet. But if you have a big 5-bedroom house, that's a big downsize. So I think tiny home should be relative to you.
And did you see in the chat, someone wondered where this is? Is it on your own property or?
No. So we sold our house. We lived on French Island. We had a 3,800 square foot house on French Island. The house sold in 3 days in the middle of winter, and we were not ready for that. So we were thinking, oh, let's put the house on the market and then we'll just kind of browse and then we'll just let. So we intended to buy land somewhere, maybe out in the country. I was working at Organic Valley at the time, and so I had an hour commute. So we were thinking, somewhere in between. And then the darn house sold and we had to make a decision. So we're just renting a lot on Alaska, and we just have it plopped down there for now. And so we can move whenever, but now we've kind of gotten, we're still both working full time and need to be in the area. But actually, this coming weekend, we're going to Upper Michigan to go look at some land that we may buy to put our tiny home on someday. So we're still looking to have it on our own land. That's our goal. Yeah. Okay, well, nobody has any specific questions. Do you want me to talk a little bit about things you can do to kind of get started and some of the things that we did to help with the transition? I think the biggest hurdle for me was I'm rather sentimental, even though people that know me wouldn't necessarily use that word to describe me, I think. But I can be rather, Mary Kay is laughing. I tend to be very practical and very black and white. And so when people think that I'm sentimental, it kind of throws them for a loop. But suffering the loss of a parent, and especially at the young age that I was when that happened, I had kind of a deep connection to a lot of her things. And my husband is a mental health therapist and had been for a long time. And his favorite phrase is, the memories of the people we love are not tied up in their stuff. And so his big comment to me was, the way you mother our children is the best way to show the memory of your mother not keeping her hairbrush, or whatever the things were that I was holding on to. So the downsizing and the legacy cleaning is a super true thing. So all of my distant relatives, uncles, cousins, whatever, my mother loved to paint in her free time, and she would give paintings to people as wedding gifts. So when all these older people in my life started to downsize, guess what happened to all those paintings? They all thought I wanted them. So they all started re-gifting my mother's artwork back to me. So now I had this whole collection of painting, like legit paintings, like canvas frames, big wood frames, paintings. We're not talking desktop little images, And many of them, when she painted them and gave them to relatives, I was not even born when these things happened. So I don't hold the memory of these, but because her hands touched them and because she put a lot of love into them, they suddenly became something I felt I had to keep. And so then when we did this downsize and my husband pulled out this crate of paintings from our crawl space under our house, he was like, what are we doing with all these? And it was a moment, and it took me days to get around to this. Well, my daughter, bless her heart, my 20-something daughter, who's way smarter than me, took photographs of all of them, and she made them into a coffee table book for me. And so she had it printed at one of those online, whatever places. And so she gives me this book that has photographs of all my mom's paintings in it, and kind of hinted like, maybe you could now get rid of those paintings because you don't want them. You don't intend to hang them anywhere. That my kids don't want them because they have even less of a memory of what those things meant. But now I have this little book. It's like about this big, and it's just this super small little book, and it just fits on my little shelf. And I can pull it down and look at it whenever I want. And it did take a couple of days. It took a couple of days for me to kind of get there. And then ultimately at the end of it, I couldn't do it. My husband had to do it. So I had to look him in the eye and say, I'm ready. I don't need those, but I cannot physically take them and donate them to an art school. I can't put them in the dumpster. Like, somebody has to actually do the work for me, but I'm ready and they can go. And so you're going to find things like that, I think, in your life that become the stuff that you're holding on to. And really, when you can have those conversations with whoever the next person is that would get them, and they can look you in the eye and say, don't want it. I don't know why you think I do, but I don't. And you can find a different way to hold on to those memories versus the actual thing itself. That was a huge release for me. And a big part of the healing journey too, because it became more proof of concept that the memories of these people live in my heart and live in the way that I treat other people, not in something she touched 25 years ago. Does that help a little bit? So that's kind of my story about what to do with sentimental things. I think another sentimental thing that takes up a lot of space that was hard to get rid of is wedding dresses. Anyone? Wedding dresses? Yep. I have 5, probably. Mine, our middle daughter, her biological mother died when she was 5. She got married in the 80s to my current husband. Her wedding dress was like huge, like 7 people could have fit underneath the skirt, right? Those 80s with the great big huge crinoline things. Thing is massive. And people held on to it for her on the off chance that she wants it. And the reality is she doesn't. She looked at that thing and she's like, I don't want it. But she's having a hard time getting rid of it also because of other people in her life who think she needs to have it. So her aunt and I are turning it into baptismal dresses. And then we're going to donate pieces of it to local women's organizations that make them into angel dresses for babies that die either in the hospital in the early stages of their lives or are born stillborn, or for whatever medical reasons don't survive. And so we're donating pieces of the dress to have it made out into angel dresses, which is something her mother would have just adored, I'm sure. And so there's things like that that we're talking about too with other legacy items that are really hard to move and hard to part with, but trying to find creative ways to pass the sentimentality on in a way that benefits a bigger group of people. So there's two sentimental stories.
So Anyone have a practical question for you?
Yeah.
Our kids are both in their 20s and we're holding on to various kitchen stuff, little furniture things, because someday when they get a house, they may just want this.
Nope, they don't. So my oldest daughter and her husband just bought a house last summer. And so even doing this minimalist thing, we kept, we didn't force our children to downsize their stuff. We just got a storage unit for a couple of years and we let them put their stuffed animals and all that crap in there. And so when she bought this house, I was like, oh, good. I'm cleaning out your stuff out of the storage unit and I'm going to bring it to you because now you have a basement and it's your problem. So, and then I said, do you want the extra bread maker? Do you want the extra china that I've been holding on to for you? And her answer was no. So they don't want that stuff. The bread maker that I used in the 90s is not cool anymore. And there's a much more modern bread maker on the market. And honestly, my children are gainfully employed. They have good jobs. They're both teachers. Her and her husband are both teachers in the Madison area. They just go buy that stuff. If they want a bread maker or a rice maker or something else, they just go buy it. They really don't want these things. And so that was kind of an eye-opening moment for us too. And honestly, your local domestic abuse shelters and the Goodwill, those are better places for those things because there truly is somebody in need somewhere in the community that would benefit from those things more than your well taken care of children, to be kind of brutal, right? I mean, our kids have everything they need, everything they want from us, but there's other people in our surrounding community that need those things more. And so we found women's shelters and other places like that we could donate items to where we knew they were going to get used much more appreciatively than from our kids.
Sherry commented that she was able to help her kids a lot with some of these items just like that. And it makes me think a little bit, so is there a mindset with this of just as a society, should we be valuing this old stuff instead of saying, oh, I must have the newest, greatest, coolest bread maker? If it works, should I be just as happy with this one? Or my old dishes, or, the glasses that aren't cute anymore, but they work, they're fine.
I think that's a personal choice. And I don't want to say that it should be this way or that way in society. My husband and my dad was a Depression era kid. And so he kept everything and reused it. I still rewash Ziploc bags and use them again because one use, it's still good. The thing still works. I'm going to still use it. So I'm kind of in that middle ground of keeping things that still work and are still good. And I want the newer, more modern version. I have a mix of both in my life. And I don't know that there's any, one way to do it, which is why I think that what comes in, where the stress comes in the bigger lifestyle, when you're trying to downsize, is that forcing of the opinion onto whatever side you're not on. So for me to force my kids to take my really good old stuff that still works and tell them it's worth using again when they really don't care, that's wasted energy. It's wasted energy on their part and on my part. And ultimately that doesn't matter. So it's kind of like knowing your audience, I guess, in business vernacular, is I know the audience of my children and I know what they want and what they don't want. And I'm not going to put my effort into that when we could be making memories together instead. But some people in this room, your kids may like the older things and may want the older things and may want you to hold on to it for them as they start their life. And that's totally okay too. It's really about knowing what that situation is and then working within it rather than trying to, swim upstream against a known situation.
We have tons of furniture in our home that we just have held on to because we thought one of our kids might want that or this or that. And they don't anymore. They did appreciate it when they were starting out, but they've moved on from that now. So, and we did just clean out my parents' home as about a year and a half ago when they moved into long-term care. And it is a challenge because when you get right down to it, when you're ready to say keep or not keep, they don't have room for it. You at first there's that, oh, I remember that painting. I want to put that up in my house. But eventually you get to the point where I don't have that same sentiment anymore. And now I probably should get rid of it. But so the effort of actually getting rid of these things is my problem, basically, because I'm lazy. So that all just piles up. We have a electronic graveyard in our home as well. So
Yes.
I think it's just taking the effort to actually do it.
It is. And I think to Mary Kay's point, I'm lucky in that my husband cannot sit still. And so if you can find that person in your life, so Mary Kay, my advice to you would be the taking the action to move it. If you know you're ready to move it, but you're just kind of like, I can't get to it. You got to find that Mark Hollowitsch in your life and put him to task of like, take this room and dump it. And I shouldn't be smiling right at the moment, but my brother's wife passed away last week. And so I'm actually in Eau Claire live screening from my lovely hotel room while we were doing this with him. And Mark Hollowitsch is out at my brother's house right now, taking loads of stuff to dumpsters because he's just good at that stuff. And it's like, I'm going to give you my husband and you're going to let him get rid of all the crap in your house that you just want to get rid of right now that you can't look at anymore. And it's over and it's done and there's no emotion and you don't have to feel bad about it. And so finding that person in your life, maybe too, that I should bottle this and make a small business out of it and put him to work. You're giving me a really good idea, Mary Kay. Because he's just good at that stuff and he can just kind of help people talk through, let's just get rid of these things. And so we're back to doing legacy cleaning again and cleaning out all the things that you kind of clutter up your world with. So that's a really good tip. Find somebody in your life that's maybe less emotionally attached that can kind of do the dirty work per se of either taking those things away when you're ready, but you're just not able to get to that step, but you know you're ready. Find somebody that can help you move those things along. That's a really good way to start. To Mary Kay's point about the electronics graveyard, I think when you're ready to kind of say it's time to downsize, I think the easy things to do are the areas where you don't have an emotional attachment. So clean out the electronic graveyard. Just pick one thing, one topic or one junk drawer. Don't try to eat the whole elephant because you'll get really discouraged and it'll lead you down a whole bunch of rabbit holes that you kind of can't get out of. So start with something like your junk drawer or the batteries or the electronics graveyard that you don't have emotional attachments to. And if you don't remember what that cord went to and you haven't touched it in a year, you're not using whatever device it went to. Or you have some other cable that device is functioning off of. So just get rid of it, like just throw it away. I think from a clothing perspective, the 6-month rule doesn't necessarily work as well in Wisconsin. And so I don't think you should put yourself onto those kind of 6 months, throw it away. You don't have to go like all Marie Kondo on everything, but you have to find that transition that works for you. I know for my husband and I do like having a variety in my outfits. I don't like wearing the same 5 or 6 things every year, but I've made a very hard line in the sand that if I'm going to go to TJ Maxx and buy myself a new shirt, I am throwing away a shirt out of my closet or donating. I say throw away, but I don't mean that literally. I'm going to get rid of something else that is in my closet. And it's just a hard rule in the sand for both of us that we are not adding, we're replacing. So when we do want something new, we allow each other to do that, but something else has to go. And so it kind of forces you to maintain that constant downsizing. You're constantly building that muscle of throwing something away or donating it and bringing something new in. And that really helps prepare for the bigger items in your house later. But little things you don't have emotion with, shirts and electronics, when you bring in something new, remove something else and try to teach yourself to stay within a small area for a while and see how that goes. Or like a game closet, was that Stacy who said that? Like cleaning out your kids' games. You know, when you transition from the kids don't play Candyland anymore, and we don't have grandchildren. Like now my kids play adult games with us, like cribbage or some of those kind of games. And so we got rid of Candyland, because by the time we do have grandchildren, we'll want a new version of Candyland, I'm sure. You know, so we kind of donated all of the old games and things that were more of teenager life, when we knew we'd have a good 10-year span before we needed that type of thing back in our house. So thank you, Stacy. That was a good idea. Game closets are a good place to start and do something small. Cards. How many people have like a bazillion decks of playing cards? Lots. You probably only need two. You know, so we did the same thing because we love playing cards. We love playing poker. We love playing cribbage. And we pick up a pack of playing cards every vacation we're on. And we're like, okay, we got to stop that. No more playing cards. We only need 2 decks of cards. And so we kind of had to decide that all that stuff can go to. So pick a small area in your house and try one little thing. This is my favorite thing in the kitchen is I limited my kitchen pantry, like food, down to just 2 cabinets. And so now we buy, I don't go to Costco. I do not have a Sam's Club membership. I do not need 5-pound bags of flour for just the 2 of us. Not a thing. We don't need it. So we went back to shopping once a week, and we buy the smallest sizes of everything. It does cost a little bit more per ounce, per penny, however you want to do that thing. But money is not our concern. Like money is not why we were doing this. And so I don't care. It's like, I'm not in this to like save 2 cents on a bottle of ranch dressing. So we buy the small sizes of everything, and I only keep what's in that pantry. And I always go to the grocery store on a full stomach. Always go to the grocery store on a full stomach. That's my other #1 tip, because you won't overbuy. And all of the little snacky stuff doesn't look so appealing because you're like, oh, I'm not even hungry. And then sometimes you're like, I don't even know what I want for dinner this week because I'm not hungry. That's a good thing, because you can't overbuy on food. And so if you try to keep, that's another area to start, is like slim your pantry down, and then try to just like limit it to a couple of shelves and see if you can live like that, if you can get yourself down to a smaller pantry space and not overbuy on food. That's another great place to start.
So have you run into the situation where you toss something out and sure enough, 6 months, a year later, you're like, oh, I could really use that?
Sometimes, yeah, but it's not, it's more like I get invited to some party and I'm like, oh, now I wish I'd kept that pink dress. But the reality is I just go buy a new pink dress. So it's nothing that has like an emotional attachment to it. I think occasionally my kids have kind of done the, do you still have grandpa's, I don't know, insert whatever. And then you have, and it is something that can't be replaced. And you're like, oh, darn it. I knew they were going to do that. It's come up, but I think because we spent so much time emotionally getting attached to this idea and getting through it, that now, oh, well, I mean, this is where the non-sentimental side of me comes in, where it's like, well, nothing we can do about that. It's gone. So we look for a substitute if it's something we need. I'm a very big fan of borrowing. If it is like a dress I need for a wedding, but I know I'm never going to wear it again, I'll just call up my friends and say, do you have any awesome dresses I haven't seen? I have to go to a wedding. And then we just borrow from each other, because that's kind of fun too. Then I don't have to spend the money. So yeah, it happens, and that's kind of unfortunate. But I really make it a point to not let that be an excuse to accumulate again. Any other questions in the chat box? What's going on over in the chat box?
I've often thought too, I could really, change the way my house is and get down to a lot of stuff, but it seems like that cycle would always start again. Like, what we need is just one more hook by the back door. And then suddenly we'd be all on this thing of adding this and not that again. So how do you stop that temptation of starting all over again?
Oh, that Mark Hollowitsch, he loves finding a new hook to hang in the house, or a new thing to reconfigure. Honestly, it gives him a hobby. So he will, like, he's rebuilt, we've lived in the tiny house 3 years, and he's rebuilt the deck 3 times. So when he needs a project, he like takes the deck off the house and rebuilds it. But it keeps him out of my hair, and it's fine. And he's not like adding, he's replacing. So he's taking off the old, he's reusing the wood, he's just reconfiguring it into a new design. And the neighbors think it's hysterical, because they're like, what's he going to do with the deck now? So so the other thing is, I pawn him off to all the older ladies, the older widows in our neighborhood. We have a lot of old single women that live around us. And so I've just put him out there of like, he can be the neighborhood husband. If you need a hook hung or a picture hung, or you want something reconfigured in your house, just take him. He works for cookies. So they'll feed him cookies because I won't give him cookies, and they put him to work. So it's kind of like rejiggering that energy. And because, like I mentioned, our daughter and son-in-law just bought a house, they have a lot of stuff they got to do down there. So he just goes down there for the weekend and builds things for them and puts hooks up in their houses. But occasionally within our own space, he will get kind of a thought process of, if I rejigger the bathroom a little bit and do a little bit more hooks, you would actually have more space to organize things a little bit differently. And so it's just balancing so that you don't overdo it. You shouldn't like put hooks up just so that you can go buy more stuff. It's more the mindset of, he wants to rejigger some things so that the stuff we have now works better for us. And so a lot of it's finding those areas where you can poke at. So, you know, like when you open the 2 cabinets under your bathroom sink, that is just a great big cavernous open area. He built shelves under there and built kind of a little shelving system, and under our kitchen sink too, so that I can get even more of our kitchen product, you know, the cleaning products, and organize them better so that I don't have to get on my hands and knees and try to get all the way back underneath the pipes and find that bottle of vinegar that fell over. And so some of it is worthwhile, Julie. Some of that effort is worth it because everything in a tiny home has to work and it has to function. Our table has sides that pop down. So when it's just the 2 of us in the house, it's a very small 2-person table. But when the kids come for Thanksgiving, we pop the sides out and then we slide it further out into the room. So he's been really good about that type of system within the house too, of finding things that push away when you don't need them and then they pull out and they expand. And so a lot of that, finding new ways to organize your stuff in a tiny home, really matters because it makes your space more usable.
I'll just mention that anyone else can jump in and talk too. You don't, the rest of you don't have to go by chat. So, okay,
yeah, please
to pop in. I was wondering, how did you decide which sentimental things you did want to keep?
So a lot of it was around the memories. That's kind of how we ended up doing it. So like the thing with the paintings of my mother's, my daughters don't have any recollection to this at all, but my mother's china, I actually use it all the time. So when the kids come in for dinner, I use my mother's china religiously. And one of my daughters wants it. So, okay, we're not getting rid of the china. Like that could have been donated, but nope, we use it. My children have memories with it. And one of them has said they want it. And so those are kind of the sentimental things that we're keeping. Christmas ornaments, that was a big sentimental thing that we're keeping. So in our tiny home, I actually put up 2 Christmas trees, which people think is like crazy town. But my dad and my husband give me a Waterford crystal Christmas ornament every year. And those bad boys are heavy and big. But then we have our family Christmas tree. And so what we do every year is we take ornaments off the family tree and we give them to the children. So as they're growing up and getting their own spaces and getting their own Christmas trees, we're slimming our family ornaments down and passing them on to the children because those have sentimental value to them too. And they need a starter set for their trees. And so they get a new one from our tree. And then my Waterford ornaments, my children know how much I love them and they know that it's in my house every year. And so they know which ones they want as they get older. And so those we will pass down too. So those I kept. Those I thought, well, I gotta put my stake in the ground on that. My husband wanted to keep his dad's tools and my dad's tools. And because my husband is so good with his hands and likes to build and do things, those have value. They have a need and they have a functional benefit to us to keep them. And they have a sentimental value. So my husband chose his dad's and my dad's tools as something to keep. And then when our son-in-law and our daughter bought their house, we took a portion of those tools and put them in a little toolbox for him and moved some of them to his house to get him started on his own tool collection. So we've tried very hard to link the sentimentality to the practical nature of it and to the fact that my children have memories of those items as well. Because if they don't have the memory of it, they're not going to keep it once we're gone anyway. And so we've linked the things that we kept to a current memory for them. That was kind of our delimiter, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
And you kind of answered my next question too of, is there a hobby of some sort that you have that you say, you know what, we just like this a lot, so we're going to have a lot of stuff for it?
Together, we love to kayak, and we have a tandem fishing kayak that is super big, and it doesn't fit in our tiny home or in our tiny yard. So we do have a storage unit for that because, you know, and it's on a trailer. I mean, it's got the life jackets and the fishing poles and all the stuff that goes with it. But that's something that we like to do. But part of our purpose in downsizing was to be able to do that together more. And we want to be able to go out together kayaking and fishing more and not say, oh, I got to clean the 5 bathrooms today. You know, boring. So the storage unit expense and the need for it matters because it suits the objective for us to do this and participate this way. So we kept that, obviously. And then I love to crochet and knit, and yarn is big and bulky. So I've tried really hard, though, to only buy the yarn for like a current project because it's hard to store a lot of that. Where before, you know, if I was making a run through Michael's for something else, it's like, oh, I'm going to swoop down the yarn aisle because there might be a fun yarn. Or if we were traveling, I'd want to go to a little local yarn store and pick up something, and I've had to stop doing that because yarn is hard to store. And so now I only buy what I need for a particular project, finish the project and move on, and then I can start another one. So I also don't have more than one open project, craft project at a time, which is hard, but yeah.
In hindsight, anything you would have done differently?
Actually, I'd get rid of more.
Ooh.
I mean, I kept more than what I should have when we moved in, and I was very proud of myself. Don't get me wrong. I'm like, wow, we did 4 dumpsters, people. 4 dumpsters of stuff went out of our big house before coming over. And I still feel like I kept too much now. But at the time, you know, I kind of did what I was able to do mentally because it is hard. It's not easy. It's a process, and you kind of have to cut yourself a lot of slack as you start the downsizing process. Be gentle with yourself, you know. But even today, you know, and now helping my brother this week has kind of refreshed my desire. And so I told my husband, I'm like, I'm purging the closet again when I get home. So be ready. You know, like it's time to sort through the clothes again. So I go through these phases where I'm kind of like, yep, that's got to go. My husband went and bought some Tupperware thing, you know, little Glad food containers or something a couple of weeks ago. And I was like, what? We don't need more food containers. Like, why are you buying food containers? And it was just, I don't know, he saw them on sale or I don't know what it was. So it became the Tupperware drawers, like a continuous thing that needs to get purged once a year because the lids get lost or whatever. So it's never perfect, but I think in hindsight, I would have gotten rid of even more before coming in.
I don't know if you saw in the chat, but someone responded to your yarn addiction.
Ooh. Oh, yes, I know. And I have a daughter that teaches 4K. And so actually she raided my craft area and took everything to school. And at the time when we did this, she was a student at WTC in the early childhood area. And so we donated all of my older craft things and yarn items to the early childhood education program because they used them in practical testing and other things. And that's actually where we donated my mother's paintings too. We donated the canvases to WTC for art students to repaint over so that they could get another life, another shot at life. So we've been really good about doing that. When I say throw away, I mean it very generically because we tried super hard to donate before just dumping into landfills somewhere. So
someone else also suggested that we could kind of get a list going of places to donate things. So if you have an idea of that, go ahead and pop it in the chat. And then I think I have the capacity to save the chat at the end of this and we can send that out to everyone. So that's a good idea. And what was the early childhood program you said you donated some of this stuff to?
It's the early education program at WTC.
Okay.
So a lot of those students are getting like daycare, like degrees to manage a daycare or work in a daycare, or to teach like 4K, they'll end up working in a Head Start program. So all of those organizations need the kind of crafty items that kids can use that they use in early development. And so I donate a lot of my craft items there, actually.
Okay, good, good. Anyone else have a good question for Cate? Or a bad question, a marginal question, a fun question, whatever it is.
A personal thing. You've got something personal that you're like, what do I do about this?
Okay.
I have a question. You mentioned that you were looking for some land initially and you're going to Michigan to look for some land. What are you living in now that's 900? Is it like a small mobile home or?
Yep,
It is.
actually it is. It's a manufactured home. And so we don't have a basement, which is great. And after living on French Island, and then I worked for Organic Valley, like I said, so the Kickapoo, like I have PTSD over flooding, right? It's like, I won't be anywhere that I could potentially get flooded out. So yes, it's a small mobile home actually. And so we're in a, thank goodness my husband's 55. So we're in a little, like an elderly retirement area. So we have all older individuals around us, which we love. It's super quiet. Lots of big trees. We have a very small yard, but they let us do gardening. So I get to have my little garden out in front. And we have really wonderful neighbors, but we're on a month-to-month lease for the lot that we're on so that we can pick it up and move it someday if we want. And it will probably be about 10 grand to move it to a new location. So, you know, there's some cost in that, but by that time we may also say, let's just leave it and sell it or get rid of it or donate, I don't know, whatever, and then buy something new when we find the land we want. We might do that too. So we're really, this gives us a lot of flexibility to do it the way we're doing it right now. So we're not committed, which it works for our lifestyle right at the moment. So yeah, it's a good question. I see somebody put books. I am a reader. I love books, and getting rid of books is hard, but I have 100% gone back to my public library days of I can borrow a book and give it back, and I still get the enjoyment and all the love of reading. And I've become a Kindle user. So I've converted to an electronic version of reading, and they now make them better for eyes. As my eyes are getting older, I can't do anything without my cheaters. And so I've converted to the Kindle system, which was hard for me because I love books so much. But the public library and renting books is just, it's the way to go, because books are heavy and they're hard to move around. And honestly, there's only like 4 books in my whole life that I reread on a regular basis. In hindsight, I don't reread, you know, the latest John Grisham book. I read it once and I'm done. So public libraries are the way to go. Support our library system.
All right.
I just have a couple tips that I saw my mother-in-law do, and I saw my parents not do. And it's better the way my mother-in-law did it. So 2 things. One is there was a color associated with all of her 6 children. And so she put little colored dots of the color associated with that child on things that she wanted those folks to get. And so you talked about your dad doing that, but I have to tell you, that solves a lot of fighting among siblings when I wanted that, no, I wanted that. It's already determined, and people were easy to follow that because that's what she said she wanted, and it was on the item. The other thing is photos. Right on the back of your photos, who's in it and what year it was taken, if you want people to care about that photo after you're gone, because when they look at that photo and they don't even know who's in there or why, it's going to get tossed. So
well, honestly, Mary Kay, photos are a thing, because with all of our parents dead, we have like 9 Rubbermaids full of photos, and we toss the photos that were of a random field. Nobody in it. I don't know what that field was. Nobody wrote on the back of it. We got rid of it. But we actually paid a woman, I can't remember where she lives, Bryce Prairie maybe. It cost us like $1,000, but you know what? It was the best money ever spent. She scanned them all in for me. And she scanned in the front and the back, to Mary Kay's point. So I now have them digitally, and I have the writing on the back. And so I'm renaming the front with the information that was on the back, so that I'm renaming the photo so-and-so and so-and-so from this year and whatever location. It's a little ticky-tacky, but those 9 Rubbermaids of photography have got to go. They've got to go. They're too big, they're too bulky, they're too heavy. And if there is some sort of, a good friend of mine had her house burned down a number of years ago, and she lost all of those. So we scanned all of these in, and we made 4 copies of the hard drive. And there's one at my daughter's house in Madison. My brother has one up here. I have one. And then our other 2 daughters have one in their apartment. So these things are scattered so that if one of us lost the hard drive, somebody else has another backup of the hard drive. And we're kind of slowly, as I'm renaming and double checking her work on scanning in the photos to make sure that everything was captured correctly, we're doing it. We're tossing the photos, even the ones from the 1800s, because we've scanned them in and we've salvaged the information and the content on the back. That is a lengthy process, Mary Kay. And honestly, it's the last thing we tackled from a sentimental reason and a practical reason. The photography was the last big hurdle, but she's right, it's gotta go.
Just take a handful. If you're sitting around and you're looking for something to do, just take a handful and start writing on the back. It doesn't have to be sit down and spend 3 days doing it all at one time. It just can be one of those fill-in things, and eventually you'll have it all attacked. But it is lengthy.
Mm-hmm. But it is worth it, because that's what. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Margaret.
I think her name might be, or the business, Take 5.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. That's it. She's delightful. And she's super fast. And it's Take 5 Productions or Take 5 something. Yeah. I highly recommend her, because even our negatives, I have like thousands of negatives, because that was the thing in the 50s and 60s. And so I have a little loop like to look at them. And so I'm going through the negatives and just cutting apart the ones that I want her to deal with. And she's going to turn them into a digital photo for me as well. And to Mary Kay's point, I keep them right by my spot on the couch. And when my husband and I sit down to watch a movie together, as the movie's on, I kind of scan a handful of negatives and add to my pile. And then I get rid of the negatives of a tree that I don't know who took a picture of that tree or why. So I'm starting to sort through that. So I think the negatives are the last bit of my photography project. But yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today. What a wealth of information, and just a good attitude toward looking at your life and your stuff a little bit differently. If you have any ideas for other coffee and conversations that you'd like to hear, please shoot me an email. I'm Jane Nelson at gruw.org, and I would be happy to hear from you. In the meantime, have a great day.